Hey everybody, Eric in the garden. This very warm Saturday afternoon, finally getting around to doing some pruning. Mentioned had the flu over the last week, so a little bit behind as far as pruning goes. But if you watched any of our videos going back to the month of February, we mentioned how warm we've been across the southeast US. In fact, many folks across the eastern part of the country's been extremely warm. So really encouraging folks to not prune until it was actually time to do so. As we mentioned before, you can't stop Mother Nature. You still see that the bushes themselves are fully leafed out. But what I plan to do today is to lower the bush down to about 3 feet or 36 inches. You can see I'm still fighting a little bit of black spot even here in mid-March. So we're gonna lower these bushes to 3 feet. Take out the diseased roses and kind of do a restart on the plant. And what I mean by that is get rid of some of the growth, go back to some more dormant bud eyes. And what I mean by that is farther down on the bush, we mentioned that these toward the end, if they have any issues, we'll go to some of these lower ones down on the bush that are just pushing out now. And that will give us a fresh, clean start for the upcoming spring. I did a little light pruning last fall. We usually don't prune a lot in the fall. You don't want to encourage any growth, but these bushes were approaching 7 or 8 feet tall, and if they're too tall, they'll kind of rock back and forth in the winter winds, so we certainly don't want that. So this hot princess, you can see it's fully leafed out, but we'll get rid of some of the issues over the winter time in terms of our winter damage. Speaking of that, remember I mentioned not to worry about it too much, and this is what I'm talking about. Here's some winter dieback at the end of the cane. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to the 3 foot mark and just cut that out. So any of the dead cane, any injury, winter injury that we had, we're just gonna prune that right out. Here's another example of this. I've got my snow stick that I use for measuring snow in the wintertime, and I'm just gonna look at the 36-inch mark and then just pretty much hack straight across at the 36-inch mark. I'm not gonna worry about outside facing buds. I'm not gonna worry about anything but getting it down to the 36-inch level. Then at that point, I'll make some cuts to clean the bush up and get everything facing toward the outside. We'll do a separate video on that. But I do want to show you some of the damage we had this winter. There was some concern since we had such a warm winter. If we got any cold weather, this would happen. And what I mean by this is all dieback. And again, all you do is just go lower on the cane itself. You can see there's still plenty of green below that. So you just cut that stuff out. You don't have to worry about that at all. Something that's a little more troublesome is called canker. I'll show you that in a second, but here's another example. You can clearly see that that cane is dead. That is from winter injury. Again, if you see that in your bushes, don't be upset. You can see all the green, healthy cane around it. So you just prune that out, prune back to green, and you'll be good to go. Something that's a little bit more upsetting is something called canker. This happens from winter injury. Here in North Carolina, sometimes I can get some injury from the canes rubbing together. You can see some of the scratches on the canes themselves. That's something I try to prevent by some pruning. But the other way I get winter injury here, and it stinks when it's farther down the bush, you can see a little bit of winter injury there. So usually I would just cut here, but look at the canker there and there. And what we're showing you is a disease spot on the rose. Canker is a fungus that enters the cane by injury. So usually if you do maybe some pruning that's incorrect, or you have some winter injury at the end of the cane, that canker can enter. And not really a big deal, because again, you can cut that out. A little bit bigger deal, this is canker that entered the cane from a bud eye that got zapped by the cold weather. There's just nothing you can do about that. The reason why it stinks more is, unlike canker or any winter injury at the end of the cane, you're having to prune all the way back. There's the bud union there. I'm pruning all the way back down here, so very low on the bush. So I have a very short cane. So you don't want to see a lot of that. There's not much you can do to prevent it. And then as I'm looking at this bush, look at these dormant bud eyes that are starting to push out. That's why we weren't too concerned with the roses having issues with cold weather. So just cut out what you can. On this one, I'm not going to want to leave any of these green canes, because down below is some canker and we want to cut that out. So I'll have to clean that up, and you can see that there's a little bit on that big cane there. So it's unfortunate when it happens to a bigger cane like that, because that could be, you know, quite productive as we go down the road. As I wrap up this video, I'm lucky that I have an old trash can. When our local company upgraded to a different one, we were allowed to keep the old one. So I use that for all my pruning material. And the last thing I want to mention is cleaning your pruners. In between cuts, if I've got healthy wood, I don't worry about it. But let's say I'm cutting out something, this is just dieback on the ends of this Gemini. Not a big deal, but if I'm cutting out some canker and I've got a bush that's diseased, I don't want to pass that on from cane to cane or bush to bush. So I actually use a 2-cup system where I will have rubbing alcohol, some type of alcohol in 1 cup, and I'll label it so obviously I don't mix it up. So this one's unlabeled. This one here says water. So I know that I'll dip my pruners when I'm doing some pruning in the alcohol solution for about 5-10 seconds, disinfect it, and then I use the other cup itself of water to clean it off. So after each cut, dip it in the cup of alcohol, then dip it in the water, and then you're ready to go. Do I do that for every bush or every cut I make? No. Again, I primarily focus on that when I'm pruning out disease wood, and I primarily focus on that when I'm going from bush to bush. So it is labor intensive, but it's an extra step so that you're not spreading that stuff all through the garden. Next video I have, I'm going to do an update once the pruning is done, and then we're going to talk about, hopefully if I can get this done tonight, we're going to have some rain, so I'm going to try to put out some fertilizer and get things going for the spring season. So that's it from our garden. Next video you see, this will all be pruned up nice and neat, and we'll be heading toward the mid part of March, looking pretty good here across eastern North Carolina. Have a great day, everybody.